Should be like Beetlejuice remix. All right. Hello party people and welcome to my channel. My name is Shannon and this is the Sailor single player channel. Before I get started, I just wanted to say that I'm so excited to be posting another video. I swear I'm not going to make an announcement for every single video just until this starts to feel normal. Until then, I'm gonna do me, okay? Today, let's dive into the 2017 adventure game, What Remains of Edith Finch by Giant Sparrow, released by Annapurna Interactive. I feel like I've recently been diving into more indie games and late, like Firewatch before this, and then Edith Finch, and I just have to say I like what I'm seeing. It's kind of a nice change of pace. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Edith Finch and family curses and death, so let's go. What Remains of Edith Finch is a first-person exploration game. You play as Edith as she revisits her childhood home she lived in with her mother and great-grandmother until the age of 11. After her mother's death, Edith returns to her childhood home at the age of 18. There she dives into the tragedies that have struck her family for 4 generations, as each member of the family has either died a tragic death at a young age or goes missing. There is an exception, however. It would seem one member of each generation is spared from the curse and lives a long life to pass on the family name. As you explore, you'll unlock multiple rooms throughout the house that have been put aside as shrines to the lost family members as Edith learns about each of their lives and hopefully finds some amount of closure. Each room comes equipped with a document outlining the character's life and ultimately their death. It's essentially a storybook complete with multiple vignettes of each character and their short lives. While this game does surround itself with dread and tragedy, I loved this game. This game felt like storytelling at its finest. Getting into gameplay, there actually isn't much to say about Edith Finch because there really isn't that much gameplay to talk about. To put it lightly, the game is a walking simulator on a linear pathway that doesn't allow too much exploring or dilly-dallying from what's outside the different rooms. If you're coming into Edith Finch expecting another open-world RPG, then I'm sad to inform you you might be headed for some disappointment. I really didn't have much of a problem with the lack of gameplay because I was truly focused on learning about each of the family members and what their story was. And honestly, the exploration of the house in general is quite interesting as you move about the environment, as if it was a maze. You'll constantly find yourself walking through hidden pathways found in bookshelves, bathrooms, windows, you name it, as you go from one room to another. Now, as you explore each room, you do get the chance to play as each family member as Edith goes through the character's journal entries. That's really the bulk of the play that you'll get here. From clicking a camera to controlling a rubber frog in a bathtub, that's the height of the gameplay. I didn't have so much of a problem with this as perhaps maybe other players might, because another facet of the game is how short it is. Short, simple, to the point. My gameplay lasted about 2.5 hours, and this felt like the right amount of time for the game. I think we've kind of grown, and perhaps myself in particular, have grown accustomed to massive open RPGs like Red Dead Redemption, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and Fallout, that at times it feels like the bigger the game is, the more of an anticipated blockbuster it is. Edith Finch, on the other hand, was a nice change of pace for me. It felt to me like I could just sit back and move along with the plot without many distractions from side quests or looting mechanics and could focus on the goal at hand. Side note, not to put side quests or looting on blast, I think at times those mechanics can be really nice and rewarding in certain games, but they aren't always necessary to make a story engaging or of higher value. I will admit that in some of the games that I've played, that some of the side quests I found much more rewarding than the main storyline. We'll save that talk for another day though. Now, none of this is to say that the game felt short in any way. There's a lot to unpack here with each character and a lot to sit and ponder with. After I left my first sit down, I was itching to get back to the game and see where things were gonna go. And to be honest, when I was done with the game, it felt like I had just played 5 hours or so, but in a good way. I will say that there were times that there wasn't very much guidance for the player throughout the game. There were times I would be sitting waiting for an action to happen just to find out a few minutes in that I should be controlling the character on the screen. Not to say that this was a huge deal by any means, but just saying once you start, you're kind of playing on your own in terms of figuring out the mechanics and what it is you should be doing. Moving on to story. Oh, I love this story so much. Edith's narration for each family member, but also the events taking place in her life in that moment really kept me engaged and wanting more. In the back of my mind, I wanted to know more about her great-grandmother, who oddly enough is also named Edith, and her attachment to her house and shrines. The shrines in the bedrooms are kind of an interesting thing because I don't know if we're tethering between the inability to let things go and properly grieve the loss of a family member, or the opposite effect of keeping things we've lost in our memory. I guess it could be both because the shrines in the rooms created a lot of tension between Edith's mom and her great-grandmother to the point her mother left, so I don't know what that says about grief and the impacts of other. I don't know, everyone grieves differently. Don't come at me, I'm just overthinking over here. I guess I will say it would have been nice to dive more into those relationships of Edith, her mother, and great-grandmother with some flashbacks while they were all still alive. If anything, that would have been an interesting episode of Jerry Springer. Is that show still on? Anyway, back to the story. I really enjoyed the whole vibe of this game. Really, it kind of felt spooky as you explore the house and each room. I was constantly on edge waiting for a creature or a ghost to pop out at Edith as she moved about the house. There's such a haunting feeling felt throughout the house that I'm honestly surprised nothing happened. I might have enjoyed this because as I was growing up, I would tend to favor more of the melancholy than, let's say, Glee. But what can I say? I was a theater kid growing up, and honestly still am. Okay, so kind of wrapping up, I want to touch a little bit on gaming as an art form. Sorry, theater kid here. I feel like What Remains of Edith Finch is a good example of gaming as an art form, not just from its detailed environment and rooms, but in the narrative itself as well. One of the first rooms you'll explore is that of a younger child. While it would have been easy enough to read her journal entry through the perspective of a child, the creators take a different angle and play out her story through the characters in her journal entry. What I'm trying to say is, instead of saying, "I felt like a cat stalking its prey on the branches outside my window," the creators made the choice to have the player play that moment out as the entry is read. Art in itself asks its viewers to challenge their perspective and ingest the story from a different angle. That same can be said about another character and their struggle between reality and fantasy. At the end of the entry, it was hard to believe where the story was going because the perception of the character was so cheerful and light. To put it simply, this game is wonderful, and I would suggest most gamers give it a try. Like I mentioned earlier, however, if you struggle with slower gameplay that is more focused on narrative than actual gameplay, you might struggle a little bit. I would still suggest you give it a try though, because it's fairly short and the magic of storytelling is so wonderfully executed here. For that, I would give Edith Finch a 9.5 out of 10. Thank you so much again for watching this video on What Remains of Edith Finch. I'm realizing that I have so many more indie games that I need to dive into. I don't know, these shorter games just seem like a really nice break from the 100+ hour RPG, find all the Mickey Mouse photo ops while fetching Donald Duck's hat from Pete's Kitchen type of gameplay. Again, not bashing. I, like many others, just enjoy a nice short day trip in gaming instead of a cross-country marathon that we sometimes stumble upon. Anyway, if you liked this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button for the Sailor Single Player channel. And be sure to share your thoughts about What Remains of Edith Finch in the comments below. And other than that, I guess I will see you guys next time for the next video.